Hey Patriots, welcome to Patriot Life with Candace Keller, and we are back with Jim Lewis from Building Blocks for Liberty. Make sure you go to our website, patriotamerica76.com. Email me at patriotamerica76@gmail.com. Get on there and buy one of our cool pieces of gear. Every penny that we make goes to spreading this message throughout Ohio that we have the power through our Constitution to take America back. Jim and I will be presenting together on April the 19th, Monday, April the 19th in Bucyrus, Ohio, alongside Senate candidate Josh Mandel. Hope to see you up there in Crawford County, if you can make it, to Victory and Truth Ministries Church. Okay, Jim, thank you for coming.
No problem. Oh, real quickly, if you want to know more information about Building Blocks for Liberty, buildingblocksforliberty.org.
Good.
That's our website.
Great. Okay, the last time we were together, you mentioned a really big word when we were talking about nullification.
Mm-hmm.
And nullification being using our 10th Amendment to take our power back.
Mm-hmm.
So you said the word commandeering.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what that is. I don't know what that is.
Okay, well, when you commandeer something, it means you take it over.
Okay.
There's a doctrine that the Supreme Court has said has existed ever since 1842. It's called anti-commandeering. And that means that the federal government cannot coerce the states to enforce federal law.
Okay.
That's been a long-held principle by the Supreme Court. There's 5 major cases that the Supreme Court's heard that deal with anti-commandeering. The first one was in 1842, and Justice Joseph Story, who was the Chief Justice at the time, said that the federal government could not force states to implement or carry out federal laws, specifically the Fugitive Slave Act. He said that to do so would be coercive, and since it's a federal law, it's the federal government's job to enforce it. That was the first one.
Okay, so the Fugitive Slave Act was, if you run away, that's a crime. Is that right?
If you run away and go up north, we can send hunters up to find you.
Okay.
The problem was these guys who are the slave hunters could walk into any place in the north and say, oh, that black person's a slave right there, whether they were or not,
Okay.
and take them out.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the first time that we saw commandeering?
That's the first time we saw the anti-commandeering.
Anti-commandeering.
Okay, right.
Okay.
The next time was in 1992. It was a case of New York versus the United States. There was a low-level radioactive waste act that was passed, and New York sued the United States over it, saying that it was too onerous for them to have to do. And Sandra Day O'Connor, who wrote for the majority, said, as an initial matter, Congress may not simply commandeer the legislative processes of the states by directly compelling them to enact and enforce federal regulatory programs.
Okay.
So even if it's just a program like the EPA puts out or the FDA puts out, if the states say, no, we don't want to enforce that, nobody can make them do it.
And that's been, that's a recent history. When she did that, what comments did she hear back? Did they hear back from this? I mean, it was pretty wise of her to dig that one up.
Pretty well-kept secrets, actually. If you weren't really following the cases of the day, you didn't know about it. I mean, I ask people today, have you ever heard of these before? No. You ever heard of anti-commandeering? No. That's 90% of the people that come to Constitution class don't even know what anti-commandeering is. They've never heard of any one of these 5 cases.
Okay, so commandeer, that sounds like a Navy term. Mm-hmm. It's like taking over, like hijacking.
Commandeering, I'm going to take this over.
Okay.
So that means the federal government can't take over the state governments, can't make them enforce laws or regulations.
Good.
That's the first 2.
Okay.
The third one was Prince versus the United States in 1997, and it serves as the linchpin for the anti-commandeering doctrine. This one's kind of long, so I'm going to have to kind of read it. At issue is a provision in the Brady gun bill that required law enforcement officers to administer part of the background check program. Sheriffs Jay Prince and Richard Mack sued, arguing that these provisions unconstitutionally enforced them to administer federal programs. The Supreme Court agreed, and Justice Antonin Scalia, in writing for the majority, said, it is apparent that the Brady Act purports to direct state law enforcement officers to participate, albeit only temporarily, in the administration of a federally enacted regulatory scheme. And they said they can't do that. So even if it's just for a little bit, they can't do it. So that tells me the Supreme Court says federal government can't make the states enforce any law for any length of time at all.
Interesting. Of course,
Okay.
Scalia was brilliant, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
So Brady, we all know that was during the shooting of President Reagan.
Right, his press secretary.
And well, that's quite interesting. I had not heard of that at
Right.
all.
Now, here's the third one that's really good. When you talk to your state legislature about nullification, they're going to, first thing out of the mouth is going to be, we can't do it because they'll withhold our funds. The federal government will withhold our money. That's the first thing you're going to hear.
Yep.
Okay. In Independent Business versus Sebelius in 2012, the courts held that the federal government cannot compel states to expand Medicaid by threatening to withhold funding for Medicaid programs already in place. So the federal government cannot threaten to withhold money except for the program you're not enforcing. And if you're not enforcing it, why do you need the money?
Okay, say that again. That's a little deep right there.
Okay, the federal government cannot withhold money for programs that you are
Oh, I see.
that you're running. It can only withhold the funds for programs that you are not running.
Right.
So, and if you're not running the program, you don't need the money, do you? Because you're not running the program, so there's no
Right.
cost there for you. So if they withhold those dollars, it's not going to affect you. It's a 0-0, and that's out.
Most people don't understand, of course, that the lion's part of states' budgets is Medicaid. I think it's around 40% in most states.
Right.
And that is paid into by both the state and the Fed. So
Mm-hmm.
you're saying that they can't withhold then?
They cannot withhold monies for Medicaid programs that are currently in place and running.
Okay.
Only if they say they want you to do this with Medicaid and state says, no, we're not going to do that. They can say, well, we're not going to give you that money. And the state's going to say, I don't care. I'm not doing it, so I don't need the money.
Right.
Okay.
I got it.
It's, Justice Robert Kennedy argued that allowing Congress to essentially punish states that refuse to go along violates constitutional separation of powers.
And like you say, the federal government is always the bully, right?
Always the
Always
bully
the
on the block. And just like a bully, sometimes you just got to punch them in the nose
Okay.
and they back off.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
The last one happened in 2018.
Okay.
That was Murphy versus the NCAA. The court held that Congress can't take any action that dictates what a state legislature may and may not do, even when state action conflicts with federal law.
Okay.
Okay? Even when state action conflicts with federal law. Samuel Alito wrote for the majority, I can imagine a no more direct affront to state sovereignty than this.
Okay. When you look at our court right now, Alito is a good one. He's one of the few good ones. Do you see where the thinking is that the sovereignty of the states is the thing that separates sort of our justices one from another? I mean, clearly, you'd hate to use the term conservative judges versus a liberal judge because a judge is a judge.
I would say a constitutional judge versus a judge who's choosing to ignore what the Constitution says, and they want to rule from the bench. They want
Right.
to make things, correct things from the bench instead of having the legislature do it.
Right.
Or Congress.
Right.
They want to do it.
Okay.
And that's where I see the difference in the judges. And even some of the ones who think they should follow the Constitution don't always do it because they defer to previous precedent from the Supreme Court, which is not correct. They're supposed to go back to the Constitution and judge every law that they're looking at against what the Constitution says, not what the Supreme Court has said about it.
And what was the reaction to this case? Because that's been very recent. Do you remember much about that?
The reaction was, yeah, we knew that. They've already, because the lawyers that did it already knew it had been decided 4 times in favor of the states, and they knew it was going to be decided this time. These are 5 cases that the Supreme Court has gotten right. Mm-hmm. Even a blind pig finds an acorn once in a while. Most of the time, the Supreme Court doesn't get it right.
Right.
They punt.
Right.
They want to, we'll change the mandate to a tax.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Obamacare is
But don't you feel
constitutional.
I feel like the legislature wants to throw stuff off onto the court.
Mm-hmm.
Here, don't make us do this. You guys can.
Right.
have
That's
it.
why they sue the federal government in court. And James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, none of them said, when things go wrong with the federal government, sue the federal government.
Right.
They all said, no, you nullify unconstitutional federal actions. The state doesn't enforce them. And if you get more than one state not enforcing them, they're really in a bind. And if you get a majority of states not enforcing them, the law becomes null and void, even though it's still on the books. If it's not being enforced, it's just the same as being null and void.
How do you feel about lifetime appointments of Supreme Court justices?
Well, this Constitution doesn't use the term lifetime. The Constitution says that justices, judges of the Supreme and lower courts shall hold their offices during good behavior. That's
Okay.
what it says. Who determines that the behavior is good?
Right.
The Congress.
Right.
So the House can impeach a federal judge for overstepping his bounds, and the Senate can convict them and throw them off the bench. But they won't do it.
Right. So the makeup of this court is what it is right now. We are looking at an administration right now that is threatening to add 2 more justices. What do you think will happen if Biden gets his way and changes it to 11 instead of 9?
Well, I can guarantee you the 2 justices he's going to add are going to be justices that will toe the line of the progressive, the Democratic Party. They will be the yes votes. This goes back to 1937. Franklin Roosevelt tried to do the same thing, pack the courts.
Right.
Back in 1937. But back then, the Congress had the sense, even the Democrats in the Congress had the sense to say, no, you can't do that.
Right.
In today's atmosphere, they would gladly do it because it would give them a majority on the Supreme Court. So they would win. Every case would go in their favor.
So they would have the House, the Senate, the White House, and the court.
And the courts.
And that would be disaster.
That would be total disaster, except for the fact that even the states can tell the Supreme Court to pound sand. They don't have to do anything the Supreme Court says. Supreme Court doesn't make law, they issue opinions.
Okay.
Okay, they don't make law.
Right.
They can say this law is unconstitutional. That doesn't make it legal to do that.
Right.
Just because the Supreme Court said that law that says gay marriage is not allowed, that the state passed, is unconstitutional, does not legalize gay marriage over the whole United States. It's just an opinion on that one law. It's up to the state legislatures in each state to say, thanks for the opinion, but in our state, gay marriage is not legal.
Right. Okay, so you've brought this up, and I always associate this, of course, with abortion. So abortion is not the law, as you well know. What was determined in 1973 was an opinion given on a particular case.
Exactly.
And so that's called case law, right?
Exactly.
And so now the 50 states look at that Roe versus Wade and think, well, that's what the Supreme Court has said, so now it's legalized. You know, I hear it all the time, legalized abortion.
And it's not.
And it is not legal.
No,
So my
it's not.
question for you, no one has ever been able to answer this for me. We abort a baby every 20 seconds in this country, so 4,000 babies a day. Are we committing murder 4,000 times a day legally in this country? It would be illegal because murder is murder.
Well, let me answer it this way. Back in the 30s, everything the Nazis did in the 40s to the Jews was legal.
Like such as the park bench thing.
Park bench thing. They can't marry interracial marriage between Aryans and Jews.
Okay.
Up to the point, putting them on ghettos. That was legal.
You mean it was in the law?
In the law. And then putting them on boxcars and sending them to concentration camps. That was not public law, but it was written law.
Okay.
Everything the Nazis did was legal.
Okay.
But as the Nuremberg trials pointed out, even though it may have been legal to do it, it goes against the laws of nature, the laws of God. Okay, it is immoral,
Right.
amoral,
Right.
and it's the same thing with abortion. People may think it's legal, which it's really not.
Right.
It just depends upon if the state allows it or not. But even if it's legal by state law, that doesn't make it right.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, yes, we're committing murder those many thousands of times a day
In this country.
in this country.
Okay, so this is a great way to wrap up because you're a Christian and I'm a Christian. Most of the people who are with Patriot America are Christians and God-believing people. When I look at our administration presently and what it took for them to get there, it has become clear to me that unless you have a nation of leaders that have a conscience and a God-fearing way of thinking, you're going to continue to see corruption, right?
Yes. Yep.
So unless we elect God-fearing people, they don't have to be Christians, but I mean people who fear the hand of God. When I was in the legislature, I remember the speaker approached me early on, first budget, it had Planned Parenthood in it, and he said, you're not voting for this, and you have to vote for this. And I said, I'm not voting for this. And virtually, they almost, it's almost extortion. He said, you know what, if you don't, and after a lot of pressure, surrounded me, and I've told this story before, they literally said to me, if you don't vote for this, we're just going to take you out next election. So I fear God more than I wanted to keep that seat.
Good for you.
I didn't, it was just it was income, but I didn't care. I just didn't care. And I fear God. So I thought to myself, I can back down, because there were 17 no's going in, and they flipped 11. So only 6 of us voted no that first time. That's how much pressure they put on us. And I remember thinking, I was very scared when they said this to me, because you never know what they'll do to you. And I thought, I'm going to do what's right because I love the Lord. And I know this is not the kind of thing we talk about a lot on Patriot Life, but this is just who we are. And when I came out, I had to pass a lot of media. And, the speaker said to me, he said, we'll take your seat from you. And I finally got the courage to say, you'll not take my seat from me. God gave me this seat, and he gave you your seat. In fact, the only reason you're speaker is because God lets you sit in that seat. And so he was very shocked, because they think the end all, the be all of everything is to be an elected official. And in my life, that is not the end all. The end all is my life with God.
Right.
So when I walked out among the media, they had all heard this take place, of course, a number of times with different legislators. And my Christian, godly legislator friends were waiting on me, and they said, did you cave? And I said, no. And I thought, it almost made me cry that I had the support of my godly friends, and that they understood that the important thing is that until you have godly people in place, you're going to continue to see corruption in government, and people will be paid off. And that's just in Ohio.
Yep.
Think about what goes on at the federal level. So in your opinion, as we close, what do you think about the role of faith in government? Because our founders talked about this a lot.
Well, our founders said that a republic like ours is made only for a moral and religious people. A republic cannot last any length of time without those two moral supports. And to a man, they said that. I could give you 30 quotes on that from leading founders. But faith, I think if a person has a moral compass, that's what we need. The faith with the moral compass, what's right, what's wrong, and that's get rid of a lot of this gray area. There's no gray area to me like with abortion. There's no gray area with, sex trafficking, that kind of stuff. It's right, it's wrong. Don't tell me it's depends on your point of view, because it doesn't. There's right and there's wrong. And unless you have people with a moral compass that understand that, you're going to always have corruption in your government. And the founder said that. If you don't have people that are religious and moral, your government's going to go, right down the tubes.
Right. So do you feel pretty hopeful right now, or do you feel hopeless? Are you feeling hopeful about what we're seeing happen in the nation with groups like Patriot America and a lot of
I'm hopeful. And this time, this happened in 2009, 2010, and we made a lot of changes at the federal level. And I'm going to be honest, my contention is the federal government's kind of a lost cause at this point. Our focus has to be on state governments, having our states step in between us and the federal government and do their job to protect us and guard our God-given natural rights, which is supposed to be the purpose of government.
Right. I am very hopeful. I'm very hopeful because I believe we have the power to take our nation back. So I thank you for coming. You're a gift. You're a gift. It was crazy how we even met, and now we are just like-minded. Who knew? Two nerds.
Yep.
Two patriotic nerds. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me remind you again, please go to our website, patriotamerica76.com, and buildingblocksforliberty.com. .org. And get on the websites, look at our tour dates. We're probably coming to a county near you. And God bless you. We'll see you next time on Patriot Life with Candace Keller.